The vast majority of New Orleans, Louisiana is underwater. Tens of thousands of homes and businesses are beyond repair. A lot of the Mississippi Gulf Coast has been completely destroyed. Mobile is flooded. We are dealing with one of the worst natural disasters in our nation's history.
And Hurricane Katrina hit. And I'm like, wow, what are we gonna do? You know, come back after the storm, ran into Derek Tabb, who I've been knowing, but we've been knowing his colleagues because he was assistant band director at MAC 28 where Bunny was. And just so happened when you're good to people, you know, you lead up, you cross paths again. So he said, man, I'm putting together this, you know, I'm really ticked off on how the school systems are treating these music programs. You know, he said he wants to put a band together. Would you do it? I'm being honest. He said, I only could give you, I can't pay you right now, but, you know, if something comes in, I'll pay you. I said, no problem, let's go. You know, because I knew we would, you know, the musicians, and knew this is New Orleans. This is a mecca of music. I don't care what anyone else say around the world. This is where music is great. It's right here in New Orleans. Right there at Armstrong Park, where Congo Square is, still is today. This is where everything was formed. This is it. You know, we losing this. You know, so we really need, you know, we needed programs around the city that can help our youth, first of all, stay off the streets. You know, that's one reason Mr. Tabb formed the Roots of Music, to keep kids off the streets. Okay? So, I don't know, piggyback. The time frame kids leave school, going home, that's when they most get in trouble. So with Roots of Music, if they're on our school buses coming to Roots, they cannot get in any trouble. You know,
so in 2006, I met Derek Tabb, who's the drummer for the Rebirth Brass Band, and he approached me and said he wanted to start a citywide marching band after-school program. And he had a whole plan laid out for how he was going to draw students from across the city when they finished school to come into a location where he would have the best instructors in the city teach them how to do marching band music. And he did that because he was addressing cuts in middle school music education.
So the Roots of Music was started in 2007 to supplement the schools after Hurricane Katrina. A lot of the middle schools and elementary schools did not have instrumental music programs. So Derek Tabb saw a need to service students between the ages of 9 and 14 that didn't have music in their schools. So Roots of Music was started as a community project to provide music education and mentorship and leadership opportunities for the youth of New Orleans and teaching them life skills through the power and beauty of music.
Well, prior to Katrina, at the turn of the 20th century, education systems across the country were cutting arts education. And especially in urban schools where there's a lesser tax base, and in suburban schools you might have a full fleet of music programs. But in New Orleans, even pre-Katrina, those programs had been cut, except at the high school level where band remained very strong. So in some sense, Katrina exacerbated a situation that already existed, which is an emphasis on core curriculum subjects and standardized testing as a way of testing those, and a relegation of arts further and further to the periphery. But you basically can't get rid of marching band in New Orleans. It's just too important to the community, both in terms of parents and kids who want to go to schools with band, and two, because band is integrated into our Mardi Gras parades, and the whole sort of heartbeat of the city are these high school marching bands. So those persisted post-Katrina, even in the complete restructuring of the school system, which turned from a public school system into a 100% choice, all charter system. In other words, where schools are not required to offer arts education because there's no overarching system-wide rules for them. Even then, high school bands were kept pretty much across the board, but most everything else besides that was cut.
You know, the first time I ever went there, we went in and Derek gave us a tour of the different sections. So students meet and they break up into, well, first they meet and work on their homework and kind of have some time to blow off steam after school, but then they break up into their sections, the upper and lower brass and the drum corps, and he took me around to each of those groups, and when we went to see the drum corps, I think that in particular was just astounding for me. I'll never forget it. The students, these are middle school age students, went through a very elaborate, highly sophisticated cadences, and they just went one after another, the whole group of them. Nobody flinched, nobody looked aside, absolute discipline, perfectly together. I mean, it was just astounding. I had goosebumps, and I just knew there was something special occurring at that place.
Together, and I remember going out for the very first parade and just seeing how the crowd reacted to them. As soon as they hit the streets for Mardi Gras, like the whole energy of the streets changed and the energy of the kids changed. All of a sudden they were unified, they were all getting along, they all had a similar mission. All of a sudden they were all marching on the right foot, they were all playing the right notes, like everything clicked. And I saw how powerful these marching bands in New Orleans could be for visitors and even just for the city. So just watching them like shine on their very first parade. And then my other favorite moment, kind of happens every day, is when the kids ask for a new piece of music. When they come in and they say, Miss Stewart, can we learn something new? Can you print out a piece of music for me? I'm ready to learn something new. So it's might be a little bit more work for me, but anytime they ask me for something, it just means that we've really connected with them and that they have found a place where they feel like they belong and they have like fallen in love with something.
Well, I think it was founded after Katrina because at the time the music programs, especially in the middle school, weren't funded. And Derek and Allison Reinhardt, the co-founder, they were concerned that these children weren't going to have the same experience he had growing up. If you talk to Derek, he'll tell you that it kept him off the streets and gave him something to do, and really affected his life. And he wanted to see that opportunity remain. And so they started the Roots of Music as a method for other children from all over New Orleans. They bused them to the program to have an opportunity to participate in a marching band, learn instruments. And so it was designed to continue the culture and resources that they already had, musical culture of New Orleans.
I was brought up around both of the games, around the dope game and the music game. I just chose the music game because I had more cats in my ear. I maybe would have went with the dope game if the guy on the corner had the opportunity to talk to me more, or got with me and had put some money in my pocket and had me making some moves. If he'd have got to me and interested me more, maybe that would have been a route I would have took.
Well, I think what Derek Tabb told me is something that I pass on. We can talk about how great Roots of Music is, and of course there's no bigger fan than me. What Derek said is ideally Roots of Music wouldn't have to exist. Ideally, education in America would be equitable and there would be a fleet of arts education offerings for all Americans. But that's not the way American education works. American education works around local regional tax bases, and so wealthier districts have more offerings for their students, and that describes the average Tulane student. And the average Roots of Music student is somebody who goes to an urban charter school. Many of them are 90% or more African American. Many of them have 80 or 90% lunch vouchers, meaning that students' families are at or above poverty level. Those kids should have all the educational offerings that the typical Tulane student has, but American education isn't set up that way. In fact, with our current Secretary of Education, we're moving farther and farther away from that. The gap is widening. We call the access gap to arts education along class and racial lines is widening. So let's thank Derek Tabb and all the staff at Roots of Music and all us volunteers for doing that, but we also need to create some momentum towards opening up educational equity to all Americans.
When the storm washed away a lot of middle school music programs, Roots of Music helped fill that gap. And today it's building the next generation of musical talent. The next Irma Thomas, or the next Trombone Shorty, or the next Dr. John. There's a Marcellus kid in here somewhere.